Hello from the Forcetronics YouTube channel, and welcome to two circuit designs that generate a negative DC voltage from a positive DC voltage, and this will be part one in a two-part series. Before I get started, I'll just mention, please support Forcetronics on Patreon, where you can find exclusive content, including exclusive content from this video series. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Forcetronics YouTube channel, and if you like what you see here, please hit the thumbs up. All right, let's get started. Okay, in this series, we're going to look at two power electronic architectures that can be used to generate a negative DC voltage from a positive DC voltage. They are the charge pump and the DC to DC inverter. And not only will we look at these architectures, we'll also look at a real-world circuit implementation of these architectures that you could leverage for your own designs. So a charge pump is an architecture that's been around for a while. It can do a couple different things with DC voltages, but we're going to look at how it can be used to create a negative DC voltage bus from a positive DC voltage bus. Then we'll also look at the DC to DC inverter, which is a lot like a DC to DC converter, but instead it's going to invert the positive voltage input to a negative voltage. Well, what is a negative DC voltage also? So a negative DC voltage is just a DC voltage where current is flowing in the opposite direction. So when we think of positive DC voltage, we have some kind of voltage source. Current's going to flow from the source through the load to ground. When we have a negative DC voltage, it's just flowing the opposite direction. Current is, I should say. It's flowing from ground through the load back to the power supply, back to the power source, I should say. Where do we need negative DC voltages? Well, where I've used them is in op-amp circuits and data converters, right? ADCs and DACs or DACs. If you want to get an amplified voltage that comes out of your op-amp and you want it to be able to swing to ground or to negative, you're going to need a negative DC voltage for the negative power supply input on the op-amp, often referred to as VSS. For data converters, if you have a differential data converter, or once again, you want to capture data that's positive and negative, a voltage level that's positive and negative, you're going to need a negative voltage power supply or bus to do that. So we're going to look at two example circuit implementations. First, we'll look at the architectures, but then we'll look at the circuit implementations. One of them is going to be with the LM7705 from Texas Instrument, and that'll be an example of a charge pump. Then we'll look at the BD81870, which is a boost inverter, a DC to DC boost inverter from ROM. So as I mentioned, this is a two-part series. In part one, what we'll do is the overview of the two architectures, right? And then we'll look at implementing the charge pump architecture using the LM7705. And then in part two, we'll look at the little more complex circuit with the DC to DC inverter. We'll discuss a little bit about PCB layout, and then we'll look at some example measurements of our circuits in action so you can see that they actually work. Okay, let's look at the inverting charge pump architecture first. So a charge pump is nice because it doesn't require any inductors like the DC to DC converters or inverters. That's what's nice about them. But the downside to charge pumps is they're not good for high current applications. So if you need a lot of current, the charge pump is not the way to go. Now, I'm going to go off this image, and I borrowed this image from the great website All About Circuits, which has great tutorials on all different kind of electronic circuits. I'll provide a link in the description section of the video if you want to check out their more thorough coverage of the architecture. I'm just going to give you a high-level flyover. So if you notice, we have V1 and V2 as our voltage sources. Well, really, V1 is just our voltage source. So think of this as our positive voltage power supply. Could be 3.3 volts, could be 5 volts, could be something else. V2 is really just a pulse width modulated signal that's going to be controlling our switches. And our switches are S1, S2, S3, and S4. They're drawn a little funny, but think of them as MOSFETs, right? They're not really mechanical switches, right? And we have two capacitors, right? And this is what's key to the charge pump is we have C1 and C2, right? So what happens is V2 is going to be switching very fast. Let's start out with the first condition, which is S1 and S3 closed, acting like shorts, and S2 and S4 open. And so with that condition, V1 is connected to C1, and basically C1 will charge up, right, to some voltage level. Then our control system, V2, is going to switch S2 and S4 closed and S1 and S3 open. So now all of a sudden, C1 is connected across C2, and it's going to transfer its charge from C1 to C2. But if you notice, C2 is connected backwards. That triangle with a line connected to the top of C2 and our load is meant to be ground, right? So what's happening is C1 is connected across the positive leads of V1, but then by disconnecting from V1 and connecting to C2, we basically reverse the polarity of that voltage. So now C2 is being charged, and the top of C2, which is going to be the positive charge, is connected to ground, and the negative part is connected to, directly to the load. If you're new in the area of thinking about, inverting voltages or negative voltage, you might kind of say, well, why doesn't C2 just discharge to ground? Well, remember, for current to flow, you have to have a complete circuit, no matter which way current is flowing. Right? So the idea is C2, for it to discharge to ground, current has to flow through the load, right? And if you remember, capacitance and resistance has a time constant, an RC time constant. So it can't discharge instantaneously. So for a moment, once the switches are changed, C2 has a voltage, close to C1 or equivalent based on the switching control, and it will hold that voltage for a split second before it starts to discharge. And by switching the switches back and forth, we can quickly get a voltage to maintain and current flowing through the load to create that negative voltage, right? I hope that makes sense. So that's the basic architecture of a charge pump or an inverting charge pump architecture. Let's take a look at the DC to DC inverter architecture. Okay, so I'm going to make an assumption that the folks watching this have a little bit of an understanding of a DC to DC converter and they understand boost and buck. So this boost buck inverter architecture, which once again is going to create a negative voltage, not a positive voltage on the output. I got this image from TI. They have an app note called Working with Inverting Buck Boost Converters. So I'll provide a link to that as well if you want more information. You might be saying, well, when you take a positive DC voltage and you make it negative, you're not boosting it because you're making it even more negative. But the idea is when they say boost buck, they're talking about the absolute value of the output, right? Forget the negative or positive sign. Notice we have HS and LS MOSFETs. So these are our switches, just like we had in the previous example. HS stands for high side switch and LS stands for low side switch. And so we get a condition where we have V in, we have C in, which is our input capacitance, and that's just meant to have a stable input voltage and serve as an energy reservoir. First, let's start with the high side switch is on or closed, and the low side switch is off or open. So what happens in that situation is V in starts to flow into L1. And remember, just like a capacitor, an inductor is an energy storage device. And so an inductor, when you first apply a voltage to it, it tries to resist any change in current. So what first happens is you get the total voltage drop across the capacitor. Then current starts to flow in the capacitor and build up a magnetic field of stored energy. So then at some point, HS, or the high side switch, will open and the low side switch will close. And now we have a situation where, although it's not shown in this diagram, we have a situation where our L1, our stored energy, is connected across C out and some type of load. I know there's some resistors shown there. Those are going to be high valued resistors that are meant to serve as a feedback network for controlling the output or regulating the output. Notice that feeds back to the PWM control. So those resistors aren't our load. Our load is not shown here. But the idea is when L1 charges up and then the low side switch closes, you now have a positive potential on ground. Notice this is connected backwards like the last diagram. And the negative potential of L1 is going to be connected to negative V out, right? So remember, picture a load there, and then we're going to get current flowing from ground to the load, right? So in the opposite direction, that's what's creating our negative voltage, right? And much like the charge pump example, this PWM control is switching on and off at a high rate, right? Could be hundreds of kilohertz, could be megahertz. And so this thing is happening very quickly, and the switching and the duty cycle changes as the load changes. So keep that in mind. All right, let's look at an example circuit implementation that uses a charge pump. Okay, here we're looking at the schematic implementation of the LM7705. They call it a negative bias voltage regulator. And this is from Texas Instrument, but really it's a charge pump based architecture. You can see capacitors, you see no inductors, right? So that's always a good hint. Now, this only creates a negative 2.3 volt output. And you might say, well, negative 2.3 volts, who cares? I mean, why would we want that low of a voltage? Well, that actually is very valuable for op amps if you want the output of the op amp to swing all the way to zero. So I'll touch on that again in a second. But the idea here is C13 is essentially the capacitor that gets driven or charged based on those first two switches closing, like I showed in the diagram. So they charge C13, and then the other two switches closing, if you remember the diagram, will then charge C14, but to a negative potential that's exposed to the output. So in this diagram, the switches are inside the IC. The regulation, the switch control, and the switches are inside the IC. And then we have an output connected across more capacitors. So from the simple architecture, C13 and C14 represent those capacitors we use. But in this real life implementation, they want to have capacitors on the input to make sure they have, they're shunning high frequency noise to ground, and they have a nice energy reservoir, and same thing on the output. Pin SD is just essentially a way to shut off or enable the IC. You can see I have some notes here. I've talked about, power electronic implementations before. All these capacitors that I have in this diagram are going to be X7R or X5R dielectrics because they're somewhat low cost, but also have the low ESR values that are important in power electronics. This circuit can have a 3 volt to 5.25 input, which is useful for 3.3 base circuits or 5 volt base circuits. But let's take a look at the data sheet to get a little more in depth on how this is working. Okay, here is the data sheet. You can see that this creates a negative 2.32 volt output. Very low noise, right? So if you're working with op amps or data converters, you want low noise because you don't want that ruining your measurements or amplifying your noise through the op amp. And you can see that they're telling you right here that this is for true zero amplifier outputs. And you can see they show an example implementation where you have V plus coming in, could be 5 volts, could be 3.3 volts. And then you're using this output to supply the negative input of the amplifier. Not the negative input, the negative power supply input. And you might say, well, why such a little voltage? Well, the idea is amplifiers cannot amplify a signal right to their power rails. A lot of times you'll see op amps that are advertised as rail to rail, but there's no such thing as a rail to rail op amp, right? Rail to rail just means they can get close. They might be able to get 100 millivolts, 150 millivolts, or 200 millivolts close to the rail. If you want to create an amplifier that has an output that can swing to all the way to ground, that's where this is useful, right? But make sure you look at your op amp specs to make sure that this is going to cover it enough to go to true zero. Right? So that's the point of why you would use this to generate such a low negative voltage, right? They do have some charge pumps that can handle out to like negative 5 volts, but they're going to be very, very low current. Now, as I mentioned, one of the downsides of a charge pump architecture, and this is one of the advantages of the DC to DC inverter that we'll talk about in part 2, is they're not high current outputs. So if you look at this graph here, you have the supply voltage and you have the output voltage, and then you have the current, right? So you can see when you're using lower currents, you get a more negative voltage out. You can actually get below 0.23. But once you get up to 20 milliamps, then all of a sudden you're getting below spec output. So these are only useful if you're trying to drive an op amp that is a low power op amp. Okay, now let's look next at a little bit about what TI tells us about the architecture of this IC. Okay, if you look at figure 27, that's essentially the diagram we showed on our slide when we talked about the architecture, right? You have your 4 switches, S1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you have your fly capacitor is what they're calling it. And then you have your inverted capacitor here, right? So we can charge it. Right now they're showing the first one being charged, and then S3, S4 closes, S1, S2 opens, and then we charge up this one, and then we get our output. And they're calling this an oscillator, but basically it's, our pulse signal to control the switches. But I also want to pull your attention to here, right? What I'm going to show here is this is actually a little more complex than a simple charge pump. They're showing a block diagram, but this charge pump inverter, as they call it, that's the architecture we've been showing. But what they do is they add a pre-regulator, which is probably conditioning that input voltage in some way, and a post-regulator. And charge pumps are known to be noisy. My guess is the post regulator does a good job of keeping that output voltage really close and accurate to 0.232. And then it also probably does a lot of attenuation of noise to get it to the load because you don't want a noisy power supply going to your op amp. And then finally, the last thing I'll show you is their reference design implementation. This is where I got the capacitor values. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why they do this. They don't really show you the calculations on how you come up with these capacitance values. But they give you this reference design, and that's what I leveraged in my design that I just showed you. And it works great, as we'll see in part 2. Okay, that's it for part 1 of 2 circuit designs that generate a negative DC voltage from a positive DC voltage. If you have any questions, please use the comments section. And if you think I missed anything or you want to add anything, also use the comments section. And I'll see you back here for part 2. Thank you for watching.